My name is Jay Meszar. I'm a reality captures consultant here at IMAGINiT, and just going to give you a little bit of information about myself, and we'll get started with all the technical stuff here in just a little bit. So I started working in the AEC industry about 27 years ago or so. So I've been around a long time, kind of had the opportunity to see a lot of different things. And you know, I really enjoy what I do here at IMAGINiT. So, you know, that's kind of a little bit about my history, but starting at IMAGINiT about 14 years ago, I'm a Civil 3D certified professional, and I've been on the reality capture services team for about 7 years now. So again, I have the opportunity to work with, whether it be photogrammetry or scanning hardware or scanning software. I have the opportunity to kind of see all that cool stuff that we see in our everyday jobs sometimes. So let's talk a little bit about IMAGINiT, right? We are an Autodesk Platinum backend reseller with over 40 years of experience, over 35,000 satisfied customers. We're Autodesk's largest service partner. We have an amazing team of technical experts in the industry, over 135 people here at IMAGINiT. So if you have a question, I'm sure somewhere along the way we have an answer. We have a dedicated technical support team, a customer advocacy team, dedicated data management, facilities management, simulation, and software development teams. When it comes to our training center, we have over 32 training centers with 12 mobile labs, 8 online labs. So we can kind of meet your training needs, whether you want to come to one of our training centers or you want to be in your office. We can do kind of anything you need there, right? We also partnered with Ascent, and they're Autodesk's authorized publisher. So most of the whether it be Autodesk manuals or Civil 3D or Revit or whatever, we have written those manuals, right? So again, a little bit more about IMAGINiT. You know, one of the things we do here is we help engineering companies address their issues, right? Anytime you're kind of getting stuck and you can't get past the technical side of the engineering job, whether it be the software isn't cooperating or simply just don't know how to use the software, we can help. So we reduce costs by helping your users know the technical aspects of their job a little bit better. We improve their quality of work. Of course, Bruce, anytime you know anything a little deeper about software, we boost productivity, which of course, in turn, boosts the profitability of that person's work. Enable agility and accelerate innovation. So across the top here, you know, consulting and professional solutions. I'm not going to read each one of those to you. Just going to take us a bunch of time, but I'll let you take a look at that. And you know, we have more than 70 unique courses when it comes to the Autodesk applications, and don't forget, you know, we are here talking about reality capture. We have reality capture courses, whether you're trying to learn the hardware or the software, which of course is why we're here today, and trying to find a solution for the data that you're getting. All right. We also have IMAGINiT's Productivity Now, which is an e-learning solution and support platform. Again, you know, as part of our Productivity Now, you can log into a website on our e-learning and kind of learn at your own pace, or you can call our support center and get a hold of somebody there and have them help you through a problem. All right, so with kind of the admin stuff out of the way, let's talk the technical stuff, and let's talk about why we're really here. First thing we want to know when it comes to the agenda today is, what is reality capture? You know, so many people kind of use the term, and sometimes they're not really sure what they're talking about. They use it as a buzzword. So we'll kind of define that a little bit, or at least my own definition of reality capture. And then we'll talk about, what can be used to capture existing conditions. Now, I know you're thinking, well, aren't we here for beyond the hardware? Of course we are. That's why we're here. But we want to know where some of that hardware comes from, or where that data comes from. And we'll take a look at some of that very briefly, and then we'll move on. We'll talk about, is the software you're using, does it matter? Does it matter if I'm using one software over another, or is all point cloud software kind of the same? And we'll dig into that a little bit. When it comes to the registration of software, we want to talk about what happens when you have scanner X and you have software Y. What are the challenges of trying to bring those two packages together if they're made by different companies? Okay. We want to know, again, kind of going back a little bit, where the data comes from. Again, we're not here to talk about hardware, but again, we want to know where that comes from and kind of what kind of data we're dealing with. What about implementing reality capture into your workflows? What are the challenges there? What do we have to know about, putting a point cloud on a desktop or a laptop? What do we got to know about licensing that stuff? And again, we'll dig into that a little bit. Last couple things that we're going to talk about during this webcast is data storage. As some of you, or hopefully all of you know, point cloud data can be rather large. What do we do with it? How do we solve that problem when it comes to dealing with point cloud data? And then transforming the digital data into design and engineering deliverables. Kind of what can point clouds do for us? All right. So defining reality capture, and this is something that I kind of sat and thought about and said, you can Google reality capture, and I'm sure it's going to give you a completely different definition if it's not going to give you a software, maybe. But what I kind of came up with is just the process of capturing and recording existing conditions using a variety of instruments, right? And that's why it's so important we do talk about a couple of those instruments. The measurements collected are typically used to aid in redevelopment of existing space or add to an existing location. So we just want to find out what's there so we can add on or redevelop it. All right, so capturing data. It's a very brief slide, and just, we have different hardware that's out there, and you could be using one or maybe a couple of these. And of course, some of those instruments are laser scanners, maybe photogrammetry, sonar, ground penetrating radar, tape measure, pencil, paper. So there are just a number of different things and different formats that we can get reality captured, right, or existing conditions. So one of the first things we want to talk about is software, and it does matter. Now, when we talk about what the software does, this is something that I explain to people quite often. They want to know, hey, well, if I have a scanner that does this, this, and this, what do I need the software for? Well, the software allows you to get that data from the hardware, bring it in, and make something out of it. Turn it into a point cloud, or turn it into, in some cases, a mesh. And when we do that, we want to talk about the process of registration, and that is the stitching of multiple scan locations together to create one complete point cloud. We want to talk about structured point clouds. We'll have at least a small amount of error. And what is that error all about? This is a question I get quite often. And the graphic to the right is So of course, we're a Leica reseller here. It's coming from a Leica software, but it's very similar in any software that you use, right? There's going to be that little bit of error. Well, what happens when we have error, and what does these errors mean? For example, link error. It's the amount of shift between the point clouds when they're registered together. Sometimes we don't have enough common data, or we don't collect targets at exactly the same location. So there's a slight amount of shift between our 2 point clouds. Overlap is the amount of data points that actually lie over each other, right? So when I scan, I want to get some coverage from scan 1 to scan 2. I want to have those overlap each other so I can do registration, and we'll talk more about that type of registration a little bit. And so you can see in this graphic, I have 61% overlap from one scan to another. I'd like it to be a little more, but that's not too bad. And then the question that people always question, well, what does strength mean? Well, the strength means how the point cloud data in the XY direction. So are my walls of a building landing up correctly, for example, or am I offset just a little bit? And then when we turn that and look at it in an elevation view, my floors of building kind of line up. And are they? The higher that percentage goes up. So it's very important to understand the registration part. Otherwise, when you get through your point cloud and end up trying to put it into Revit or AutoCAD, you might end up with 2 walls or 2 floors or 2 ceilings. And therefore, you don't have a very good registration. And you know, the old saying applies here: you put garbage into AutoCAD, you're going to get garbage out of AutoCAD, right? So we want to make sure that our registration is in good shape. Okay, but our software, a good point cloud software, or a good photogrammetry software even, it should do more than registration. Okay, while registration is the most important thing we do there, it should do more. So when we talk about that registration, we can do things like match targets, for example. If any of you have been around a while, like myself, you know, the days of dragging targets with us out on the site and kind of using targets in between every set of scans, you know, that was cumbersome. And sometimes we still might have to do that. But the software should allow you to match those targets. It should allow you to take those targets and actually we can import our survey data and actually move our point cloud data over to the survey coordinates. Okay, very important that you're able to do that in your software. And not only are you able to do that, but you're able to do that easily. There's some. So visual registration, and in other software, this might be called something different. And again, I'm using an example of Leica software here. But the idea here is that we're able to take our 2 point clouds and use that overlap that I mentioned before. We kind of go ahead and lay one out over the other. And in doing so, we're doing what I call putting a puzzle. Right? And so if our pieces don't fit or tightly, well, then they really don't fit. So in the graphic to the right, you see it says align the blue and the orange. All I'm looking to do there is create one picture out of both of those clouds. And when I'm done, simply join them. The software does the registration work. Okay. And then there's everybody's favorite. People love when I show them this one in a class, right? And again, this is very similar in many other softwares. I'm just using Leica as an example. In this case, what we have to do is use 3 common points to collect and register our data, right? So you can see I'm using the arrow there on the left as the corner of a wall, and then the arrow on the right is the corner on the wall, and then the arrow up top is the corner of the building. Now, when we're doing a split view registration, one of the things we have to do is make sure that we're getting very close, if not right on top of the exact same 3 points. And this can be a frustrating endeavor for a lot of people, right? Because they don't get in there and they don't try to get the same point. They say, yeah, it's close enough. Okay? So sometimes the software will come back and say, hey, can't do it. Sorry, got to try again. All right. And you know, one of the topics I love here is point cloud cleanup, because so many times, I know when I first started running a scanner, I would get frustrated and annoyed with somebody walking through my scan. And I had to learn, and I had to learn quickly, that, hey, listen, you can't just stop the scan and restart it because somebody walked through. So what we want to do, what we want to be able to do is point cloud cleanup. And, you know, this used to consist of just doing a bunch of commands just to get rid of something like this, a couple people standing around, right? Well, it's not like that anymore. We can run the software to automatically detect those that have moved through a scene, or in this case, stand in the middle of a scene. And we can say, hey, you know what? I want to get rid of them. The software will highlight those folks, as you can see, they're now in red. And then from there, we can just hit a delete button to get rid of all of the people. Very easy way to clean up, but that's why your software should do more than just registration. It should have commands that make it easy to do tasks like this. Okay, and if it doesn't, you might want to look to a different software. One of the other things we want to be able to do here is preparation for use in Cad products, right? Whether we're going to AutoCAD or Revit or whatever software, you know, we want to be able to make sure that when it gets there, we can easily get the data that we want. So as an example, we might create what are called clippings, or in this case, a limit box. And this is really great because so many times when we collect scan data, somebody will say, well, I don't need all the other stuff. Can I just highlight this one area and make it scan just this one area? Well, in some cases you can. But guess what? In other cases, it's really not worth it. It's easier just to let the scanner do its thing. And then over in the software, we get rid of stuff like that by doing things like creating a clipping. Now, this clipping can just hide the data if we want, or we have the option to get rid of data if we want. And so when this comes over to the CAD software, we have the ability to activate or deactivate that clipping. And then what about supplemental data? one of the things I like to talk about when I teach a class is, how many times have you walked out into the field, and of course you've got this fancy equipment, and instead of you using that equipment to collect data, you're kind of taking your phone and saying, I need a picture of this, and I need a picture of that, and I need a picture of that. And so before you know it, you've got 50, maybe 100 photos just on your cell phone. And a lot of people, they never take them off their cell phone. Some people are good enough where they take them off and they put them in a folder on their network. And then when somebody asks, do you have a picture of that meter? They kind of go, well, I did, but now I have to find it. And now you're spending the time to kind of sift through all these pictures to find it. Well, a good registration software and a good workflow will allow you to manage that supplemental data. And one, if you have a good workflow, you can collect that data right in the field. And let's say you forget and you did take it on your cell phone. You can create it in your software after the fact by putting, in this case, what we call a geotag in the Leica world. And that geotag is simply putting a marker and then allowing me to attach the picture in the lower right corner of the screenshot to say, hey, this is what we saw out there, and it's attached in the point cloud. So anybody can click in the point cloud and get to that in its real location. And that's very, very helpful, rather than sifting through a bunch of folders on your network trying to find that one photograph and remember where that was in the data that you collected in the field. All right. And so then we talk about coordinate systems. And I mentioned a little earlier that we could go ahead and take our coordinate systems and we could move our point cloud to a state plane. Well, in this case, we might go ahead and simply create this concrete pad using the cyan line, rotate that so that it's using that blue line or cyan line for the y-axis. This makes it really nice for when we be able to take their data over into a CAD product, again, like AutoCAD, like Revit, and our building or our site is rotated in a way that we can easily use it in those CAD products. If we don't do this, if you can imagine sitting there looking at a picture like this, and you've got your head tilted to the side trying to work with it because it's kind of tilted in the wrong direction. Okay. All right. What about different brands? What if your software is made by the same company as your hardware? What do you do then? Right? And maybe what if you don't have hardware, but your scan provider kind of threw a file at you and said, here you go, and you're kind of throwing your hands up in the air going, what do I do with this? Well, depending on the file provided or the hardware used, the scan, it may not be permitted by the scanner manufacturer, right? For example, if you take from some scanners and try to dump it directly into another software, sometimes it just won't work. Answer number 2 is it can be done, but with some limitations. And for example, that might be that, well, we get the point cloud data, but we don't necessarily get pictures. Okay, it's kind of a little bit of a sacrifice, but so be it. And then, of course, on answer number 3 is it just doesn't matter. Some softwares will take the data and whatever format it's in, you can go ahead and dump it into the software and it will process the data as if it were its own. Okay? And like I said earlier, we are like a shop here. I don't use Faro much. I don't use Trimble much, but I know the Leica software is capable of handling a lot of different data types, and more often than not, we're under answer number 3 here and what we can do with that data. Okay, so again, we're talking a little bit about hardware here, but where can the data come from? Well, obviously there's laser scanners. Right? We got an RTC 360 over there. There's a GeoSlam in the BLK to go, and of course the new BLK 360 can come from any one of these. It could come from a competitor product. Doesn't matter as long as it picks up point cloud data and your software can process it. Okay. What about photogrammetry? Well, some people think when they hear photogrammetry, they kind of go, geez, now I got to go out and I got to buy this expensive equipment. And no, you don't. Got a cell phone? You can create a point cloud right from pictures taken on your cell phone. Okay? You can upload that data to some sites or process it in others, and just be able to turn that into maybe a mesh or maybe a point cloud. And then, of course, there are the drones that are out there, and there are many different types with many different quality cameras. And if you don't know anything about these and you'd like to get into it, I encourage you to look into the cameras, because a lot of times, some of the stuff that we buy on some websites, some of the cameras aren't so great. So the camera does matter when it comes to photogrammetry. Then there's sonar, being able to pick up data underwater. You can see in this example, there's a shipwreck. Even ground penetrating radar will walk along and pick up data underneath the ground. And of course, everyone's favorite, the tape measure, pencil, and paper, right? That's where the data can come from. I don't necessarily recommend it, because I could tell anybody on this call to go and measure a room and then go tell anybody else on this call to measure the same room, and we might get 2 different measurements. Okay. Now, the last thing I didn't put in here that I should mention is, you're sitting there going, well, I don't have any of these, and I can't get the data, so I'm not spending money on a scanner because I might do this just 1 or 2 times a year. Remember, there are scan providers out there that can provide you data. You can then use the software to open that data, right? So it doesn't mean you have to have the hardware. If you're doing it a lot, certainly helps. But if you're doing it once a year or twice a year, maybe you go to a scan provider and they provide you with data. It's always good to know what kind of format they're going to give you, though. All right, what about implementing reality capture? What do you have to do? All right. Well, I have purchased the scanner up here, but once again, if you're not purchasing a scanner and you're using a scan provider, you don't have to do that part. All right. What about computer hardware? This is a very important part of dealing with point cloud data. And I really can't stress this enough, because so many times I get a phone call or an email and somebody will say, geez, this takes forever. It's not importing very well. And I left it overnight and it's still processing. Well, yeah, once we dig into it a little bit, we find out that their computers don't have enough memory. They don't have enough hard drive space, and they don't have a good video card. So we want to prepare ourselves by making sure that we're ready to process this data. And starts with that computer, right? Making sure that your users have a computer that will process data like that in a reasonable time. So you can see here the graphic on the right, there's a minimal specification for processor and RAM and operating system. And then there's a recommended. And the recommended system that you see here, and if I go too fast and move on from this before you have a chance to look at it, no worries, you can get the recording. This is a pretty good recommended spec. One thing I would say, whatever you can afford for memory, yeah, put it in the machine. Okay. All right. So the other thing I would mention is we talk to a lot of folks, and sometimes they're getting into dealing with point clouds and the software, and they want to buy 1 or 2 or even 5 licenses, doesn't matter. But they have more people than they are going to have licenses. And of course, they want to know, can they install the software on multiple systems? Absolutely. Install it on multiple systems. Install it on the whole office if you want, but you're only going to be able to use the number of licenses you purchased at one time. So if you've purchased 1 and 1 person has opened that software, they've pulled the license, nobody else can get to it. If this happens once in a while, okay, we deal with that. If it's happening all the time, then maybe we'll buy another license. Okay? And so the last thing I'll say here about implementing reality capture, do yourself a favor and prepare your users for software use. Training. Give your sales rep here at IMAGINiT a call and definitely look into getting trained on this software. There's nothing more frustrating than not understanding why the software won't do what you want it to do, and then realize, oh, well, it's because I didn't know about a setting in the software. All right, what about data storage? Our point cloud data storage is probably one of the biggest challenges companies face when working with point cloud data. It's an easy solution to just get a small hard drive, or go on website and buy a 4 terabyte hard drive. I've got plenty of them sitting here. And attach it to the processing computer and store your data there. Okay, easy solution. A more advanced solution is to store data on a server using the software to manage the project access. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. And of course, there are even some online solutions to store data outside the company network. So let's talk a little bit about that stuff. All right, software to manage network data storage. One of the examples of this is Cyclone Enterprise that Leica puts out. Data stored on a server inside the company network, no problem. We can go ahead and use that data inside the network. If we want to share it with people outside, well, we have a couple options. We could deploy our Cyclone Enterprise on AWS or Azure. We can even put it in a demilitarized zone on our own network. Right? This allows us to manage user access and group access to specific projects. And then, of course, the end result is us streaming project data from a server, rather than going ahead and having to copy a file from one person's computer to another to another. All right, transforming data. This is one of the things I hear a lot. This is great. This is super cool. Great data. What do I do with it? Well, what do you do with it? You kind of start by looking at creating 2D drawings. Right? Maybe you're in AutoCAD and you just want a floor plan layout. You can start by just drawing some polylines around the point cloud data. There is software that helps with this and makes it much faster than just simply tracing, right? But you can just trace if that's what you want to do. You can create 3D models. You can see here, same space. We've got walls and some of the columns built in Revit, and of course, it's laying right over top of the point cloud data, because we use the point cloud data to create it. create a 3D mesh. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with a mesh, this is not point cloud data. This is actually a triangulated mesh of a point cloud. Okay, so we use the point cloud data to turn this into a model that can be used for any number of things and some analysis, which is next, of course. We can analyze the point cloud data. Taking the data and saying, okay, well, what about my floor levelness? What does that look like? Can I create a heat map? And there you go, I have a heat map. The numbers there are showing floor levelness, the deviation in the floor. All right. So I'm happy to go ahead and take any kind of questions. I see there's one there that was asking about what software. I'm not sure which one we were talking about at the time.
Okay, so I'm here with you, Jay. So we'll wait. So Ryan, if you just want to just type back in. So Ryan's question, because people can't see what the questions are, what software is he using in the example? Jay mentioned Leica. What else is recommended? Okay, so Ryan, we're just waiting to hear from you. Next question is from Terry. Where can we add and view geotags?
Great question. So geotags are an awesome tool. Of course, you can use the registration software to view those geotags, but they can also be viewed over in in this case, like a TrueView viewer, or if you're using Cyclone Enterprise.
Okay. And then Ryan got back to us and he's saying, is Cyclone the preferred?
As far as I'm concerned, Cyclone is preferred, yes.
Okay.
I feel it does a fantastic job, and we've had clients come from competitor software to say that it is better than what they were using.
Okay, and I think we've answered that, right? What is the software in the previous screen? All right. What software can be used to create 2D lines?
Yeah, so 2D lines can be done in just simply AutoCAD. That's where I had mine, AutoCAD or an AutoCAD-based product. I happen to be using Civil 3D in the graphic that was on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions on working with recap and LGS files using ACC? I think, is that Autodesk Construction Cloud? BIM 360?
I don't for ACC and BIM 360. LGS files I know won't go up there, and I believe it, if I'm not mistaken, so please, I believe it will struggle with the recap data as well.
Okay, Carl, I'll ask the question, but we may have the same thing. So would you consider Construction Cloud doc/collab as a significant platform to leverage the .rcs/.rcp files into other softwares, AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor?
Again, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't believe it's a great solution just yet. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. All right, Matt. Okay, let's go here. Would you prefer software for getting the point cloud to CAD drawings? Oh, what is the preferred software for getting the point cloud to CAD drawings?
So again, we use Leica here at IMAGINiT, and the CloudWorks for AutoCAD software allows us to use the LGS format from Leica to create the 2D lines. There's a big help in there that allows it to kind of do an automatic trace of those lines. So the short answer is CloudWorks for AutoCAD. or if you're in Revit, there is a CloudWorks for Revit as well.
Okay. Anthony, I'm going to ask the question, but I'm not sure if Jay's the right person to answer. So here's the question. Is your experience with Leica far superior than Faro? It seems a lot of features discussed are not available in Faro. Are you able to comment on that, Jeff? Or sorry, Jay.
I don't get the opportunity to use the Faro scanners very much. I honestly don't have a desire to, but all I can tell you is that the clients that we have that have used Faro in the past have really liked what Leica has done, if that helps you at all.
Okay, fair enough. Can you use R360 to orient point clouds to a specific datum similar to what was shown using local coordinates?
Yes, and in the one graph there, when you get the recording to this, if you go back through and look, there's one that has some purple boxes on it. These are survey coordinates. So Register 360 will allow you to apply survey control to your point cloud, and therefore move your point cloud into place.
Okay. Christopher, future projections for size of point cloud files. That's the question. Any known work to reduce the file sizes?
That's a good question. You know, we want to be able to reduce as much as possible. A number of commands that will help you reduce the size of the point cloud by decimating the point cloud, but then of course you're losing data. But I don't like to do that because I don't want to lose the data. Using file compression on their LGS file format, which can make your point cloud, 40 to 60% smaller.
Okay. My headset is getting a bit wonky, Jay. If you see that I'm pausing, so
Okay.
just bear with me. What is the best tool for reducing fuzziness in the point cloud, e.g., filtering by intensity versus range, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, my short answer, and I'm sorry to be a little flippant on this, is I think you need to talk about better scanner. If you're getting noise like that, there might be some issues there. But as far as the noise goes, there are a number of softwares out there. For instance, Leica's Cyclone 3R will help you clean up the noise, whether we can use the intensity to eliminate some points that maybe we don't want.
Okay, can you hear me, Jeff? Or Jay, sorry.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Do you have experience with context capture and how it would compare in workflow for our Bentley products?
I don't have experience in context capture, I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you compare visual surveys versus Pix 4D surveyors versus Trimble RealWorks?
Is the answer, can I compare the Leica software? If that's what it is, I'm going to go with that. I really wouldn't compare something like Leica's Register 360 product to something like 20, for example. They're completely different. Pix 4D is more of a photogrammetry, where Register 360 is not, right? So we would need to take something from Pix 4D to be able to get it over to Register 360. And that export would be possibly a E57 file or PTS file or even an XYZ. So, and as far as Trimble RealWorks is concerned, I can only go on what our customers tell us, and it's not, they don't love it.
Okay. So Dennis, I'm not sure if you can answer this, not knowing what the project is, but can I get by with a Cyclone Register 360 and not have a Cyclone Enterprise?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay.
The Cyclone Enterprise is only for data storage and use of that data. You can use Register 360 with a Publisher Pro license, for example, and get an LGS file. And that way you have a single file. Register 360 will also allow, you still need the publisher license, but also allow for export to recap, which I don't love as a workflow, but it does do it.
Okay. And then we've got, now I jumped, so I'm sorry. What
That's
software supports adjusting elevations of point cloud data after being collected?
Good question. Yeah, sometimes we have an issue with point cloud data being at a negative elevation value. If you remember the graphic I showed with the coordinate system, Register 360 will do that. It will allow you to put the elevation up or down, allow you to put down or you can pick a point and make that point your answer is Register 360 will do what you want.
Okay. I think you might have answered this. Can the list of geotags be exported in any Leica software?
It cannot, to my knowledge. We can save the pictures, but I don't believe we can export the geotags.
Okay. Did I read this? Okay. How well do point clouds published? Is it topography?
Topographic?
Topography on BIM 360. What is it?
Gotcha. So they want to know about how well I'm assuming this surface can come out from something like Civil 3D. So in the CloudWorks software that I mentioned earlier, it has a feature that allows us to take the point cloud and essentially make Kogo points out of it to turn that into a Civil 3D surface. If you want an exact replica of the surface that you're trying to work with and put that into something like Civil 3D, you could use that Cyclone 3DR software to turn your surface and then land XML it into Civil 3D.
Okay. Are you aware of any software that will automatically export features such as floors, walls, ducts, light fixtures from point clouds?
I know there are softwares out there that have a supposed automatic feature. From what I'm hearing from customers, there's still a challenge because you have to go in. Have to read them. It has, I showed where you, for that matter, and then it will turn them into the actual Revit walls. So it's not like, what I'm trying to say is it's not an automatic process, but it is something that you can do much faster than if you did not have the tool.
Okay. What software is best at automatically classifying noise?
See that question, and I did see that question, and that's a good one as well. And again, that's going to be something that is dependent on the data going in. And what I mean by that is if you're using photogrammetry, I know the Pix4D does classification. I believe the reality capture software does classification, and Cyclone 3DR will also do classification.
Excellent questions. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm jumping down here. I'm going to go to Elaine and say, do you know if Cyclone Enterprise is FedRAMP compliant? Am I saying that right? Fed, FEDRAMP.
You know, I don't know.
Not currently.
It's not?
Not currently.
Awesome. We brought Jeff. Jeff's here too. So we got Jeff and Jay. All right. Right off each other. If you're not aware of, if you do not care for recap, what program do you prefer for viewing point cloud?
So again, you know, using the Leica solution, we have the ability to create the LGS file I mentioned. They have their own viewer known as a TrueView viewer. It's a free download. So if you create the LGS file, you can simply open it right up in that TrueView viewer.
Okay. Let's go. I'm just trying to clean up some of these. Some Apple Pro level cell phones have the capacity to do, or capability to do 3D scans. How good is the accuracy compared to a good dedicated laser scanner system?
Yeah, that's a great one too, because Apple's come a long way with their LiDAR camera and or scanner and built into the phone. It doesn't really compare to a good laser scanner. It does collect point cloud data, but with that said, one of the things that Leica has done is they've gone ahead and incorporated that workflow into their software. So we can actually use our laser scanner, and for areas that maybe we can't get our scanner into, we can kind of take the iPad, it's what I use, and kind of scan behind an object and be able to collect some point cloud data with and again, I'm using an iPad, but to supplement the point cloud data, the scan data.
Okay. All right, Stephen is asking, can Autodesk Recap show the realistic 3D images that Leica can create? That's question one.
Yes.
Okay. Also, how are the detail images? Images taken? These are details of nameplates, etc. Is it a separate camera?
I'm sorry, I missed that one. I don't see that one here. Can you say that again?
Yeah. Okay. So the first part of it was, can Autodesk Recap show the realistic 3D images that Leica can create? The answer was yes.
Yes.
Right? Also, how are the detailed images taken? These are details of nameplates, etc. Is it a separate camera?
I got you. No, and yes, so what we're doing in the Leica workflow, to explain it very quickly, we're pairing our scanners with the Leica scanners with an iPad, or in some cases an iPhone, Android phone, Android tablet, whatever. And they have an app that runs the scanner as well as allows you to collect that supplemental data, where we can take our iPad and just simply click a picture from the iPad and attach it into the point cloud, and that saves with the scan data. So when you import the scan data, it imports that as well.
Okay. And then part of Stephen's question, a couple of ones down, it says, my question relates to using Leica RTC 360.
Okay, which one was?
I think that's the one we were just talking about. Maybe that was what, that's the scanner that he has. So in regards to the question I just read.
Okay, yeah, so we're using the iPad, Steve. It's that allows us to collect that supplemental data. And if you don't know that, you can reach out to me and we can talk about that.
Okay. All right. Will AutoCAD products filter public source, and it's LIDAR clouds to allow surface model creation?
You can import some data. Oh, I think you actually, no, you have to turn it into a recap format now before you can bring it into Civil 3D. Turn it into a surface.
Okay. What is the process for adding geotags into a photo at the time they are taken?
Yeah, so you need to use the, again, if we're using the Field 360 app that goes with your Leica scanner, there is a process in there of adding geotags right to each individual scan. So you go to an individual scan and tell it to add a geotag. There's a button and take your picture, then attach that picture to the location in the point cloud that you want. So very hard to just talk about it without showing that. I don't have one up that I could share right now.
Okay. And then another question here: how can I export the or just the 360-degree picture from Register 360? That's from Solomon.
So Solomon, I'm assuming you're using an LGS file, and if so, you can turn off point cloud data in the export options.
Okay. Do you have any experience or know of? I'll try Cintu cloud software.
Yeah, I know of it. I've obviously seen their website and things like that, but I don't have experience using it.
Okay.
Man, I just saw one here. Now I lost it.
I'm just trying to clean up some of this stuff. This is
Somebody had one. Oh, there it is.
if you want to answer that, Jason has a question as well.
Okay, I'm going to grab Ryan's right above his first.
Okay.
The great scanner for photos is the MS60. So when we talk about the MS60, don't get me wrong, great piece of equipment. What we're talking about with the MS60 is a great piece of survey equipment that also does some point cloud data, right? It's really not comparable to a high definition scanner in the sense that the scanner collects much better, tighter data in a much tighter time frame than the MS60. And again, I'm not putting the MS60 down. It's a great piece of equipment, but it does not work with Cyclone Field 360, at least not to my knowledge. And if Jeff's still on, he knows different. Please, Jeff, jump in.
Not right now, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Two more questions. We're up at the top of the hour. So Jason's question: we generated a point cloud of our office with a drone flight. What is your recommended procedure, software, spec, process, etc., to extract the photographic map, contours of ground and road surface, removing cars, buildings, and high vegetation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways you can go about it. I don't know which drone software you're using to process that data at first, but if whatever you're using you don't like, Cyclone 3DR has great tools for that, both for everything you mentioned, for contours, getting the road surface, of course. We can remove cars, buildings, high vegetation if you want to classify it. Cyclone 3DR will do all of that.
Awesome. And Solomon's question, his follow-up question is, my question is that I want to download the pictures that the scanner takes separately.
In Register 360, you will be able to, as long as you've got the right license, you're able to right mouse click and download the images, the JPEG images.
Okay. Hopefully that helps, Solomon. Okay. Well, there's just, I guess, one last question here. Advanced question. This is from Mark. What is the length of time a Register 360 license can be checked out for?
To my knowledge, you set the date that that you want it to end. As long as your license is good, that amount of time. But if you're checking the license out for that long, Mark, you might want to think about putting on a network you can get to through VPN, or maybe you can't get it through that way.
We're still waiting on the line, so thank you for your time, Jeff, or for Jay, and thanks, Jeff, for coming in, helping out with some questions.
Absolutely, thank you. This was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. All right, thanks, guys. Have a good day, everyone. Be safe. Bye-bye.